Providing enough fuel for a very high-power race engine is obviously challenging. We've probably all seen cars equipped with fuel systems consisting of multiple fuel pumps mounted in surge tanks and fuel tanks, making sure that the engine has sufficient fuel to remain safe and reliable under high-power operation. Now the problem with this is when you are faced with multiple pumps, it provides complexity both in the installation as well as the ability for more parts to go wrong. Basically, we're opening ourselves up for more potential areas for failure. Now a technology that certainly isn't new, but one that we've been seeing emerge over the last few years is the use of brushless fuel pumps. Now, there's still only a handful of manufacturers supplying brushless fuel pumps and controllers out there on the market, but the technology really is impressive, particularly with the capability of these pumps. The pump that most people are using is generally referred to as the Veyron pump, but the pump itself is not the tricky bit. In order to use a brushless fuel pump, this requires a specialised controller, and that controller is utilised to control the fuel pump speed. Now, the advantages of the brushless pump compared to a conventional fuel pump is that with a conventional fuel pump, as we increase the fuel pressure, we tend to see the flow out of the pump drop away. And ultimately, this is exactly what we don't want to happen, particularly if we're considering a high boost turbocharged or supercharged engine. As the boost pressure increases, we need to also increase the fuel pressure to maintain a consistent differential pressure across the fuel injectors. Now, of course, as we increase the boost pressure, the pump finds it harder and harder to flow fuel, and we see that fuel flow drop away. And if it gets to a point where the fuel flow drops too far, we consequently see the fuel pressure drop. On a brushless pump, on the other hand, the controller has feedback for the actual pump speed. And this is what the controller is doing. It's controlling that fuel pump speed and maintaining a fixed speed. What this means is that within the bounds of the pump's capability, we're actually going to see a consistent fuel pump supply or fuel volume supply regardless of the pressure that we're putting on that fuel system. Now, in the case of the pump that we've got behind me, developed by Injector Dynamics, this single Veyron pump is capable of supplying an insane 1,100 litres of fuel flow per hour at 110 psi. So to give you some numbers around that, on pump fuel, this would equate to somewhere in the region of about 3,400 horsepower of fuel flow capability. If you're running E85, this drops to around about 2,200 horsepower. Now, just to remind you, that is from one single fuel pump. So this is something that we're definitely going to see making its way into a lot of high-end turbocharged and supercharged cars over the coming years as these systems become more and more available. Now, while this system has the ability to flow up to 1,100 litres per hour, of course, we're not always going to need that amount of fuel. And if you're running this pump as hard as it's capable of running and you're not using that fuel, what it means is that you're circulating a lot of fuel unnecessarily through the fuel system, and what this does is adds heat to your fuel. Now, with the Injector Dynamics fuel pump controller, this also has the ability to take input from an ECU, and basically what we can do is control the output of the fuel pump as the engine's fuel demands increase. What we can do essentially is run the pump at low speed, at idle and cruise, where we don't really use much fuel, and then as the boost in RPM increases, we can drive the pump harder and harder. It is also important to note that when we've got this pump on maximum kill, producing 1,100 litres of fuel flow per hour at 110 psi, it is drawing a very large amount of current, somewhere in the region of 70 to 80 amps. While it's unlikely that a brushless pump and controller is going to be a cheap option for your fuel system, when you compare this to potentially 3, 4 or 5 separate pumps, along with installation and wiring of those pumps, and the reliability problems that come along with this, it does look like a very attractive option for a high performance, high power engine.
If you like that video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already a subscriber, make sure you're subscribed. We release a new video every week. And if you like free stuff, we've got a great deal for you. Click the link in the description to claim your free spot to our next live lesson.